Continuing Reading-Molasses Moon. Left off last time. This is my Kindle Fire. In this section, I doubt if you can see it or read it, but just to show you what I'm reading from. Okay, I'll repeat a couple sentences and then just continue on. I don't resist being a comedy. It seems I'm either downright silly or wondering how I died again, and how I'll cheat the pain this time. There are people who deal with tragedy gracefully, and I admire them, though I just assume we didn't need examples of gracious suffering. The next letter, February 28, 1994, Jacqueline Onassis, editor, Doubleday, 1540 Broadway, New York, New York, 10036. Dear Miss Onassis, on February 9th, I mailed a short query to you nutshelling a satire sextet for which I'm seeking a publisher or agent. The query was mailed before the media had informed of your illness. Not knowing how much work you're able or willing to continue presently, I hesitate contacting you again. However, at this point, you're clearly my first choice and an editor for my work. I'm sure you can decide for yourself if you're interested in or currently able to consider a project such as mine. Enclosed is the first chapter of a work of nonfiction which will detail behind-the-scenes effort producing my sextet and getting it to market. As you will note on the cover page, Molasses Moon, autobio nonfiction, will stand alone, or sequel Quarter Moon Dues, the sixth of my sextet, which is a cross of fiction and non. For your convenience, I've also enclosed an extra copy of my query of the 9th. Wishing you the best and not expecting a reply, and yes, unless you have the desire and ability to review any of my work, please discard this material if you have no interest in it. Sincerely, Linda G. Shelnutt. Enclosures letter, February 9th, manuscript chapter. Of course, at the time, no one knew precisely how ill Jacqueline Onassis was and whether she would recover or be returning to work. And as noted, that letter had been sent prior to any awareness of what was to come. Now, continuing reading. I hate to be the butt of my own humor, but the mistakes I make often in my queries, usually typos, can be doozies. This time all I did was repeat that the query was dated the 9th, it was the 10th, and typed your, Y-O-U-R-E, as you are, as your, Y-O-U-R, possessive. I do know the difference, I do. And I know that its, it-apostrophe-s, is, it is, and its, without the apostrophe, is possessive. But my unconscious mind has veto power over my fingers running rampant over my keyboard, as well as over my proofreading ability. Probably yours too. We aren't all impeccably skilled editors. It's a matter of automatic habit. Well, habits are automatic by nature, so I repeat myself. I'm an English teacher too, at least I once was, as you know if you read chapter 1. It's a good thing the school administration didn't know how strong my unconscious mind was. When I forgot how to spell a simple word like color, I swear I did this once, and was scribbling furiously across the blackboard, not backboard, I would stop and ask my students how to spell it. Of course, they thought I was a smartass, just checking them. They loved me, really. They wanted to riot when I was asked to resign because I let one of my seniors use profanity in the dialogue of a story about truck drivers. She asked my permission to do this in my creative writing class. I told her she could, as long as she realized that she would limit her audience to readers not offended by bad words. She turned in the story on time, excellently written, following instructions perfectly. This was a first for this normally rebellious student, who usually didn't do homework at all and failed most subjects. I gave her an A for the project. The principal, upon discovering the foul language in the story, demanded that I give her an F. I refused, telling him that she had asked permission and I had given it. I said he could change her grade if he wanted to, but that I wouldn't. He let the grade stand, but asked me to resign. I had lasted 2 years at that small conservative high school in Oregon. Several before me had remained only 1 year in that position of English teacher. I told the students not to riot. They didn't. I was honestly relieved to get out of a situation in which I wasn't allowed to teach, was required to indoctrinate. I have dyslexia too. I reverse numbers and letters when my unconscious mind gets overloaded, or its circuits get shorted, or whatever it is they do. Why do you think I majored in English? It was my worst subject. I was a genius at math and science. That's why I have the right to tell you how to live. I haven't done that yet. Just wait. It's bound to happen sooner or later. Oh yes, the second query. March 1, 1994. Cynthia Vartan, Editor-at-Large, Henry Holt and Company, 115 West 18th Street, New York, New York, 10011. Dear Miss Vartan, you are listed in Jeff Herman's Insider's Guide to Book Editors, Publishers, and Literary Agents as an editor for queries offering practical, how-to, self-help manuscripts. Molasses Moon is a mass-market, nonfiction, light satire of a decade in continuing effort toward publication of a sextet crossing fiction and non. Molasses can stand alone as a how-to not to get published in the 90s for a new author of fiction, or it can serve as the true story culmination of my fiction nonfiction project, a septet in that case. I won't know which methods work until I succeed, but the story is educational and sometimes hilarious. On February 8th, I sent a 1-paragraph query nutshelling my satire sextet to Alan Peacock at Henry Holt, to which I received a reply noting an enormous number of submissions and the space on our fiction list is extremely limited, not accepting unsolicited proposals, suggesting submission to an agent or publisher listed in the LMP, who does accept. It is unexpectedly pleasant to receive a rejection on professional letterhead typed directly to me and identifying my query, even if it is unsigned, the editors. Henry Holt certainly has more class than houses returning poor copies of forms to dear author. When I forego enclosing an SASE with a query, I don't expect even a form response unless my query has sparked enough interest that the agent or editor requests to review a manuscript. Agents are less interested in fiction from unknowns and not recommended by current clients, than editors, knowing publishers review new writers of fiction rarely, if at all. Thanks for the suggestion to use the LMP. Herman's Guide is more helpful with its limited specific listings. If you'd like to see the nonfiction Molasses Moon's first chapter, please request it. I'll begin the second chapter, including a copy of this letter, after I mail it. End of letter. My short queries of February appear to be getting good responses in spite of the fact that at the end of quarter moon I said I wouldn't get any. Well, not good ones, but getting a response more often than to the longer letters was good. John Wiley & Son sent a nice apologetic letter specifically to me on real letterhead. Doesn't fit with the nonfiction general interest list that we are developing. It was from Chris Jackson, editorial assistant, rather than the senior editor to whom I had addressed it. The query, J.P. Dempsey. Still, it was sent by someone with the courage to write and sign his own words and name. Pocketbooks answered my query to Sally Peters, senior editor, with, "Doesn't fit our list at the present time," typed on letterhead, unsigned, from the Pocketbooks editorial staff. I honestly do appreciate getting a letter typed directly to my name rather than an ugly copied form. And it's especially nice for the response to arrive in the style of a publisher's letterhead envelope instead of in my SASE. You have no idea, possibly you do, how disheartening it is to get an SASE. It's even worse getting millions for 10 years. You know I'm exaggerating millions, and I won't have been getting them for 10 years until 1995. Yawn. I may have just slipped on a banana peel. My mood's been a little sweet this chapter. I'll try to do something about that. Or maybe I'll just let my moods be. I find that forcing into anything is not only a pain, but doesn't work. This doesn't mean I won't work like the devil to get to dig out of a grave, though. I suppose I'd better print out an envelope for the letter to Cynthia of Henry Holt. I've been using small invitation type white envelopes and folding the letter in quarters. Cynthia's filled all of one page. Maybe I'll go downstairs to get something to drink. A nice glass of non-alcoholic ice water with lime before printing the envelope. I'll be careful going down the stairs. There are no soft billowy clouds on the floor down there, but the stairs do have crisp, hard edges. I know, believe me. Just because my bruises are nearly gone doesn't mean I want a fresh batch. Chapter 3. Keeping in Touch. March 2nd, 1994. Chris Jackson, editorial assistant, John Wiley & Sons. 605 3rd Avenue, New York, New York, 10158. Dear Mr. Jackson, thanks for your letter regarding my satire sextet, Crossing Fiction and Non. I appreciate your typing it to me and identifying my project. You noted that my sextet introduced in one paragraph query addressed 215 to P.J. Dempsey doesn't fit in with the nonfiction general interest list you are developing. Having just begun a nonfiction general interest manuscript, I thought I'd query Wiley & Sons Sweet Tooth. Molasses Moon humorously and lightheartedly describes a decade of effort toward publication of my satire project, nutshelled in my 215 query. Molasses could be considered a how-to after I succeed and see how I did it. Upon completion of this note, I will begin Chapter 3 and include a copy of it in the text. See, I keep my promises. Again, I appreciate your courteous response. If you have no interest in the first chapters of Molasses Moon, no response is necessary. I wonder if light humor fits Wiley's list. Good luck in your own pursuits. End of that letter. Since the original query to P.J. at Wiley was printed on a half sheet of bright yellow notepaper and mailed in an invitation-size matching yellow envelope, I repeated that format for the above note. I'm still hoping to get a response from Miss Onassis, but I can't be sure she'll receive either of my mailings, let alone read them. The mailbox was empty today. What else can I say about that? Not much. Of course, about Miss Onassis, retrospect realized that her illness very likely could have been, like most of us have, a flu bug that you get over in a day or two and you're back at work. In this case, that wasn't true. The mailbox was empty today. What else can I say about that? Not much. I think I'll change the subject and tell you about Jeff Herman now. He's the agent who authored the great resource book I've mentioned, Insider's Guide to Book Editors, Publishers, and Literary Agents. Herman's a resourceful man himself, marketing his own how-to books and tapes, as well as being a full-time literary agent. I wrote a 2-page letter to him last December 7th complimenting his guide and telling him how I found it at the Tattered Cover bookstore in Denver, following my nose. In a strange way. My nose is small and turned up, but I've taught myself to follow it anyway. He wrote back saying, "I must see it," my writing. I hadn't hoped he'd request to see a manuscript, as he states in his own listing guide that he represents mostly nonfiction. With higher hopes than I've had sending out a manuscript, I mailed New Moon Blues to him on December 18th, the day after his birthday, and the day after receiving his request. On January 18th, I received my manuscript in my SASE with a note. I have to be honest, I'm not much of a reader, although my profession seems to indicate otherwise. Further, I rarely get absorbed by New Age types of writing. With this material at this time, I can't be of help, which I never like saying to someone who is nice. Please stay in touch. Best wishes. I wondered why he had asked me to stay in touch. It wasn't until the middle of February that it struck me that he may have been joking. He had said in his letter asking me to see my work, "People with unusual, actually weird, names tend to be rather interesting." Having called me New Age as well as weird, he could have meant that I should keep in touch with reality, rather than with him, real though he is. I wrote him complimenting his sense of humor. Of course I was disappointed, of course, but I realized it was the best that he didn't read the manuscript, even though he requested it. Forcing yourself to read something you've decided, correctly or not, isn't of interest, is not only painful but draining, silly, and certainly not cost-effective. Yet I was mostly disappointed that he had termed the work New Age. I don't see it that way. In any case, Herman's guide lists details about agents which should have been helpful to me. As an astrologer, as you know, I'm able to determine quite a bit from birth data. Not all entries included this information, but for those which did, and seemed appropriate for my type of work, I made up astrological charts. I wrote to them, slanting the queries to the charts. Many of these queries have not been answered at all. It doesn't help to know a person inside out if he isn't receptive for whatever reason to something new. I've been wondering, though, if Mr. Herman might be interested in reading this manuscript. It's not fiction, after all, but I suppose he could see it as New Age, and he might not like my style of humor, or my illegal doctorate. He should at least be given the opportunity to see this work up to here, though, don't you think? It'll be up to him to decide if he should take the time. Note that even if he doesn't respond to the letter, I'm going to write him in a few minutes, after I save this file and switch to my letters file. Even if he doesn't respond or responds no thanks, I'll still appreciate what he's done for fledgling writers. I highly recommend his books, tapes, and integrity. I've already sent a few letters to Herman, including them in Quarter Moon. I won't merge them here for fear of being repetitious to those who have already or may in the future read that book. I'm being rather positive here, aren't I, assuming that all my work will see print. Oh, yes. Herman's book, in conjunction with Deborah Adams, Write the Perfect Book Proposal. 10 Proposals that Sold and Why, was published by John Wiley & Sons. It says so in the Insider's Guide. In case Mr. Herman doesn't respond to the letter I'm promising to write here in a few minutes, maybe I should also admit that the letter I wrote responding to his rejection of New Moon may have pissed him off. It was a nice letter, It really was, overall. But I told him at the end of the page I had been pissed off that the manuscript returned minus the Gilbert paper box in which it was housed when I sent it. I was being petty, I know. Now I wished I hadn't said that. Oh well, I was hoping he would take it as meant, as a petty, humorous jab. And he said I was nice. My only excuse is I've had a hard time acquiring good boxes for my manuscripts, and roughing the mail routes supported by rubber bands in lieu of a box gives paper a hard ride. I suppose I should do the same to you or me. Actually, the manuscript. I suppose it would do the same to you or me. Actually, the manuscript was in better shape than you'd expect. I can send it out again, no problem. Oh well, I should say, live and learn. I doubt I'll ever perfect keeping my mouth shut when I should. I'm better than I used to be, if you can believe that. Next is the letter written to the Jeff Herman Agency. And I think I'll save that for later. I don't know what to say about this book, but at least it's the truth. And a person who doesn't give up. No way you're going to get anywhere otherwise.